Okay, right. This is poem at 39, and I'll take you through my thoughts and analysis and so on. Overview, it's a nostalgic poem. The speaker is exploring the role that their father plays in the shaping of their life. She realizes that she wouldn't be the person she is today without his influence and impact. It celebrates, basically, the poem celebrates all the different aspects, a number of different aspects of his character. And in doing so, ultimately, it takes on the form of a celebration. It's a real celebration of him. It honors him and the role that he played in Walker's life, or the speaker's life. The poem's kind of in two halves. It moves from a focus on the practical and pragmatic nature of the father and the practical lessons he's taught her around, finances and so on. And then it moves into the second half. It starts to focus on the more colourful aspects of his character and his generosity and his spontaneity. And it finally ends on a sort of a note of pride, really, that she feels that in some way she resembles him, and that would have he himself would have been proud of that. So, as you can see it on the top, I already highlighted it. This is what I sort of consider to be the main theme in the poem, sort of the relationships between parent and children, the legacy that parents leave, the influence they have on their children. It takes the form of a nostalgic memory, really. A speaker at 39 years of old, reflecting on the role their father played in their lives. It opens with this declarative statement, "How I miss my father." You'll notice that it's end stopped, which really gives it just this matter of fact feel. How I miss my father, just this bold, blunt statement, and sort of leaving the reader in no doubt that the father is, of course, missed. And then it moves into this sort of regretful four lines, really, where she says, "I wish he had not been so tired when I was born." So obviously I've written here that you can see, obviously, tone of regret. It seems quite a sort of depressing, miserable start to the poem, quite sorrowful, really. You'll see as well that the lines here are sort of noticeably short. So I've written short clipped sentences or clip lines that kind of feeds into this kind of despondent tone of regret in some way. The second stanza focuses on sort of the father as a pragmatic and practical parent. We find out that he taught her how to fill in forms and do sort of life's administrative tasks, I presume. So, yeah, like I said, the father here has been obviously seen as this practical, pragmatic, responsible individual doing the dirty work of parenting. There's a lot of end stop lines in this little section. I don't know if you agree, but that lends the writing a control in an organization, perhaps reflective and representative of the father's and his personality and what he deemed of value when raising his children. The poet then goes on to say that she learned to see bits of paper as a way to escape the life he knew. So the implications here are obviously that the father's life perhaps is one of hardship or suffering, disappointment maybe, but that he obviously wants his daughter to aspire to greater things, or did want his daughter to, hence has taught her this way of getting out of it. He's shown her an escape route. So again, it's this idea of him taking on this responsibility in order to ensure that his daughter's life betters his in a way. The third stanza, again, it opens with this, "He taught me." So once again, this father is being cast in this role of guide, instructor. This time it moves away from the pragmatic and the practical to the moral. So here he tells her that telling the truth did not always mean a beating. So he's instilling in her a sense of moral integrity, that sometimes it's better to come clean and be honest. And yes, sometimes that's going to result in some kind of disciplinary action. but it doesn't always. It's important to tell the truth. So you get this idea that the father was also a moral man of integrity. It also reinforces that, again, he didn't shirk away perhaps from the, the discipline element of parenting. Um, so there's a suggestion here perhaps that he was strict as well. There's a juxtaposition between this stanza, the stanza 3 and stanza 4, as it sort of marks the halfway point of the poem. So it moves from this kind of, though many of my truths must have grieved them before the end, so sort of this very sort of serious reflection on their relationship, and her acknowledging that their relationship sort of, had conflict in it, and some of her truths and things that she told him would have upset him. And so it's all very serious. But then it moves into something that's much more frivolous and fun. I suppose this halfway mark, this shift in tone is represented by, is captured in this repetition of the first line. You'll notice that there's a significant difference, this exclamation mark. So uh, it marks a movement, a hinge point, and the second half of the poem becomes more celebratory. It moves away from the pragmatic and the moral and the serious to, let's have a look at what good fun he was, how generous and spontaneous he was. So that's worth making a note of. It's an important thing that you could say in regard to form, structure. This first image really, in this second half of the poem, really introduces this idea of spontaneity and fun. And he cut like a person dancing in a yoga meditation. So obviously that's oxymoronic in a sense. Dancing and yoga meditation, they seem to be sort of contrasting in the qualities and that you associate with them. Perhaps it suggests that the father, as a personality, was quite a complex, colourful man. He was active, dynamic, fun, and yet also calm, meditative, thoughtful. He was layered as a human being, and that oxymoronic image captures that. Then we're told that he craved the voluptuous sharing of good food. So this is the first mention of food. Food and cooking becomes a metaphor really for a way of symbolizing and capturing the father's attitude towards life. And it's something that the speaker has taken on board. So he likes sharing good food. So this idea that he's generous. The voluptuous sharing of good food. Voluptuous as a word is phonologically quite rich. It feels sort of quite juicy in a way. And so that captures, in an auditory sense, the generosity of the father. Moving down into the next stanza, now I look and cook just like him. So we get here, now I look and cook just like him. Again, it's like a declarative statement that captures her pride. There's a sense that she's pleased that she looks and cooks just like him. That is a sort of, badge of pride. The cooking becomes a metaphor for, like I said, attitudes towards life. And the way that she cooks, which was just like him, is her brain is light. She tosses any old thing, this and that, into the pot, and she never seasons it the same way twice. So that becomes, sort of figuratively speaking, a comment on her life, that she lives this unfettered life, free and unbound. She's spontaneous. She just tosses the colloquial, casual sort of tossing this and that line. Captures that kind of, there's a carelessness to it. There's I'll try it out, see how things turn out. Seasoning none of my life the same way twice. So this idea that her life, like her father's, was one of variety and experience. Happy to feed whoever strays my way, she ends the stanza. Again, bring us back to this idea of food and cooking being synonymous with your approach and attitude towards life. And here it functions as a symbol of sort of joy, humanity, and compassion. And it all ties back to this idea of generosity, of spirit. The final stanza becomes slightly more reflective, but there's a real intensity to it. He would have grown to admire the woman I've become, declarative sentence full of certainty. There's no doubt there. She's absolutely convinced that he would have grown to admire the woman I've become, which I think probably demonstrates the closeness of their relationship. She knows how he would have felt and what would have pleased him and what he would have admired. Um, and possibly because they're the qualities that she admired in him, and she's taking them on herself. So that's how she can be so certain. Uh, and then the final two lines is a sort of asyndetic list: cooking, writing, chopping wood, staring into the fire. It seems quite odd, but when you look at the elements that of her character that she zooms in on, the idea that she's self-sufficient, creative, self-assured. There's a blend of sort of traditionally masculine and feminine traits. So this idea that she's this all-rounded, strong, powerful, creative, thoughtful, reflective, generous person, everything that her father was. So that's what I mean. It's a celebration of the father. It's a poem that honors him and his legacy and his influence on her. One thing to note about the form is that it's written in free verse, which say a couple of things about. Firstly, perhaps it reflects the father's character and philosophy, just like he's a complex, multi-layered man. Hence, the poem is reflective of that. It's not rigidly structured. It's not just one thing. It's a number of things. But also the fact it captures like the nature of memory, that memory isn't really organized and rational. And the poem does read a little bit like a train of thought there. It's slightly disjointed, as if the memories of him are coming back to her, and she's sort of spilling it down on paper, if that makes sense.